In early July 2020, a California woman would vanish in the Sierra National Forest in the state of California after a minor car wreck. While there have been many reports of people vanishing in the wilderness, perhaps what makes this case truly unique is the bizarre circumstances surrounding it. In particular, several witnesses in the area would report to see Sandra after she was reported missing. In particular, a toddler would spot Sandra, although his family couldn't see her. An experienced hiker, Sandra's behavior was erratic, according to eyewitnesses, leading to much speculation about what happened to her. In this episode, we will examine the strange disappearance of Sandra Hughes, as well as theories of what happened to her. In June 2020, 54-year-old Sandra Hughes moved from the state of Hawaii to California. In early July, Hughes decided to go on a solo hike in Sierra National Forest in the Fresno area of California. More specifically, she planned on hiking in Johnson Meadows, an area that was breathtaking, but also extremely remote and dangerous with both cougars and bears. Still, Sandra was an outdoor enthusiast, even at one point completing the training to become a park ranger. She had been married twice, but was currently unmarried and had no children. Some speculate she decided to go for the solo hike because she had contracted COVID-19 and didn't want to stay restricted to her home. On June 26, 2020, Sandra would talk on the phone with her family, letting them know she would be going on a solo camping trip. Sandra agreed to touch base with them during the trip, letting them know she was okay. This would be the last time anyone in her family spoke with her. The first indication that something had gone wrong on Sandra's hiking trip happened on July 2nd, 2020. Then, several hikers would find her gear and supplies scattered around her campsite. It was clear that something was amiss, as items such as personal documents and food were laying all over the ground. The hikers believed it was either a wild animal had wrecked the campsite, or possibly it was vandalism. That day, they would call the sheriff's office when they reached cell range. The authorities would come out and visit the campsite. They immediately contacted her family and informed them of the situation. Sandra's family noted that she was very environmentally sound and that she would never leave a campsite like that. As a result, a search began for Sandra. Hundreds of volunteers began searching the area. On July 4th, there would be a Sandra sighting. The hikers would spot her standing seemingly at peace and in no need of assistance. Still, the hikers said she was barefoot and had a bruise on her face, so they asked her if she needed help, but Sandra declined. Sandra was easy to identify because prior to the hike, she had dyed her hair blue. As the hikers left the meadows that day, they would spot a missing person flyer of Sandra and contacted authorities. The police would go out to where Sandra was spotted, but she was nowhere to be found. The next day, what was discovered by the authorities really adds mystery to the event. On July 5th, Sandra's car was discovered, and the car was around 5 miles south of her campsite. Her silver Saab had collided with a tree, and investigators were able to determine she had collided at a slow speed around 20 miles per hour. After the collision, her car had slid down into the ditch. The police decided to leave her car just in case Sandra returned. Notes were left by police and her family. Inside her car, items were scattered throughout the car in random places, just like the campsite. Around a week later, on July 12th, in Yosemite National Park, they would find Sandra's sleeping bag. Search efforts continued during this time, but no other clues were found. Then, on August 9th, 2 hunters several miles east of Sandra's car were driving and they spotted a woman up on a hill leaning against a tree. She was alone and had no equipment on her. The hunters would pull over, concerned for her well-being. They reached out to her, but Sandra didn't respond. This has led some to conclude she suffered some type of head injury that left her disoriented. The hunters noted she didn't seem to be injured, so they let her be. Just like the hikers on July 4th, though, they would spot a missing person flyer and report her to authorities. They also noted she appeared thinner than her pictures. Strangely, the hunters said she was wearing overalls, which was very different than the July 4th eyewitness sighting. What happened 1 year later really adds mystery to the event. In Sierra National Forest on July 21st, 2021, a couple named Jake and Victoria Gorba, along with their 3 young children, were traveling to the summit of Shady Peak Mountain. As the family was ascending the mountain, they decided on a flat area to pull over and have lunch. As the father pulled over the vehicle alongside the road, what happened next would truly be frightening and strange. Their 3-year-old son, named Caden, was talking to someone outside the window. The conversation continued, and Jake and Victoria turned around and looked outside, but no one was there. Then the parents asked Caden, who was he talking to? Caden said, "There's a woman out there, and she needs our help." The parents looked out again and saw nothing. They told Caden again that there was no one out there. Caden stated, "Mom, you gotta trust me. She's right there. She needs our help. She's lying face down, her legs are straight up, and she's dead." Jake would go investigate, while Caden would continue to adamantly say that the woman needed their help. Frightened, the family would return home after this. Later that night, Victoria would look on Facebook to try to determine who Caden had seen. Victoria recalled the events of that day in a Facebook post and also described what her son had seen. The woman was wearing a black t-shirt, jeans, and had blue hair. This would reach the sheriff's department, and authorities would reach out to the family. They met with the family and decided to show Caden a lineup of pictures. After showing several pictures of different women to Caden, the toddler was able to identify Sandra several times. The police would go and search the area Caden saw Sandra, but would find nothing. This case is relatively new, and over the years there's been several theories that have been proposed. The first is that during the car crash, Sandra suffered a head injury which left her disoriented. Proponents of this theory note that she seemed incapable of thought and was unaware of her surroundings. She appeared to wander in the woods with no regard for health or her safety. Still, skeptics of this theory ask the question, why has it been so tough to find her? Surely a woman disoriented in the woods would be leaving clues behind and wouldn't be able to travel quickly, especially with bare feet. This leads many to support the second theory. This is that Sandra somehow perished, and that the individuals who saw her actually saw her ghost. This theory is supported by the fact that many saw her, but when authorities went to search the surrounding area, she was nowhere to be found. In addition, the story involving the toddler Caden adds credence to this. This theory speculates that Sandra was unable to communicate with eyewitnesses and was unresponsive because they had seen her spirit. Could it be the case that Sandra was killed in the woods and that her spirit roams the area? Still, this theory doesn't really answer the question why she decided to go camping after the car crash. Perhaps Sandra was planning on contacting authorities about her wreck once she had finished camping. One other theory is that foul play was involved. It was surely strange how Sandra's personal items were scattered in both the campground and inside her car. It appears that someone was looking for something. Still, by all accounts, nothing in Sandra's background raises any sort of red flag that she was involved in criminal activity. It could also be the case that Sandra suffered a head injury and was unable to find a specific item and just left things in disarray. One other theory was that Sandra was a victim of a wild animal attack. Sandra could have had her minor car wreck and decided to continue on with her camping trip. While she was camping, she could have been attacked by some type of wild animal. This would explain why her body has not been found. Proponents of this theory believe that after she was killed, eyewitnesses saw her spirit, and that's why she was unable to communicate. One final theory is that Sandra was the victim of an alien abduction. While this one seems far-fetched, it could be the case that Sandra was taken and the post-traumatic stress has been too much for her, so she hasn't been able to recover. Admittedly, this is one of the more low probability theories. Still, we know that people disappear in the woods in bizarre circumstances. This case is still relatively new, being only around for 4 years at the time of this recording. Still, unfortunately, it's tough to imagine that Sandra could still be surviving this tough terrain. Sandra was close with her family and had no history of criminal activity, so it doesn't appear that she was running away to start a new life. This case is surely a strange one, with much conflicting evidence. By all accounts, Sandra appeared to get in a car crash and wander throughout the woods, with several eyewitnesses seeing her in the following weeks. Still, the path she took, and also her behavior, leads to many questions. For example, why didn't Sandra leave a note on her car if she was in trouble, or make an attempt to contact authorities with her cell phone? Also, why was Sandra's behavior so erratic? Sandra was described as a friendly person and outdoor enthusiast, but her behavior, described by eyewitnesses, is surely contradictory to this. Perhaps one day we will get an answer as to what happened to Sandra. Still, in the remote area that she ventured into, we may never truly know what happened to her.